All right, guys, welcome back to Real Talk. We have changed from Skype to Google Hangouts, and as you can see, the picture quality, immaculate. The audio is going to be so much better, and we do apologize for that. Skype's just a piece of shit. So let's talk. Exactly.
Beautiful. This mic is beautiful.
Let's talk about your professional career. So you mentioned playing Counter-Strike, and I know that you obviously have probably so much history with this game that we could talk for hours about it. But when you first started playing, did you know that you were going to be as interested in the game as you were?
Um, I don't think so. Because when I first started playing it, I thought it was a really, really cool game, but there were like the competitive scene started to grow all in sync, right? So it wasn't like I discovered a really cool esport game and then liked it, right? Because it was just a game, right? So I don't think any of us who were playing it back in those beta days had any idea that businesses would be founded on it, that it would be the premier, pro title for many years, et cetera, et cetera. I think all of us were just mesmerized by how cool the gameplay was, right? And the idea of 5-on-5 and in this particular way. I certainly, because again, when I fell in love with it, I then found out about clans and playing ladder matches and what CPLs were, and those all grew after the game, kind of in a way, or came into my vision after I already fell in love with the game. I just thought it was really cool that you have a shooter that has an economy to it and a reward system based on that and teamwork needed, and it was just, again, as I have said over the years, like a lightning in the bottle kind of game. Quake's the same way.
When did you start playing it? I mean, what version, I guess, is what I'm asking. How early on in the development of CS
Beta
were you
1,
playing?
day 1. The
Beta 1,
very
day
first
1.
day the beta came out, I downloaded it and played it. Beta 1, day 1, June 19th.
I'm trying to
A
think.
day that shall live in infamy.
At that time I guess Quake 3 might have had. Quake 3 wasn't out, actually, was it?
Not Quake 3, no.
Quake 2 was
No.
out. Were there
Yeah.
tournaments, I guess, for it?
Yeah, because remember CPL was doing Quake before they did Counter Strike. So if you like Google the 98-99 region, isn't that when like Thresh was giving away his car and all that? That was like
I think that's right.
that was Quake's like big rise. But then as CS rose, obviously Angel Munoz chose that to be his main game, and it became the title of choice. late 99, 2000, 2001.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when CS started releasing more and more versions, and I guess, was it competitive in 1.5, or was 1.6 kind of when it really? I know that's when it took off, obviously, but
Yeah, I mean, I think I think its competitive nature has just grown through the versions,
yeah.
because again, like within weeks of the game coming out, it was on the OGL ladder, and then there were weekly tournaments, and then you see things like Domain of Games and Domain of Pain, whatever you want to call it, one or the other. It very quickly started to have competitions organized around it. Then Cal. But before Cal, there was RITD, Rumble in the Desert. There was all sorts of other, the STA League. So it very quickly, people were organizing shit around it, very, very quickly. And that game was patched very, very often. People always think it was Valve's game. It wasn't Valve's game to the very, very end. It was Gooseman and fucking, what was the other guy's name? Fucking Bing's game. And they patched the shit out of it. Always updating it. So like my favorite version is 5.2. Also played at a competitive level, but obviously it's stabilized at 1.6, so to speak, 1.5, 1.6, and then really grew from there, I would say, for sure, in the sense of scope of worldwide tournaments, scope of players getting paid. That was 1.6 for sure.
So I know you started out with a little clan called UGP. How did that get started? And I guess what does that clan really mean to you? Because I know it's something you hold dear to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's really what got me started on the whole idea of video games, other than just video games being video games, in the sense of a bigger competitive nature between humans, with structure and order and prizes at the end. And again, back then we weren't thinking about careers and getting paid money, but it definitely changed my life in that sense. I was playing in a server called Desert, very classic old school map. Again, this was before diffusion. This was hostage only. There was no diffuse. There was only hostage rescue, and I was still trying to find my way. I understood the basics, but it's team game, right? And there was a guy up on this back cliff of Desert, if you're familiar. Terrorists' job was to hold on to those little hostages, and you could sit on this back ledge, and there were 3 sets of rocks that came over to get to this area, and this kid's in the back, and he's just sniping everything, right? And I'm like, I typed to him, how can I help? I want to help. And he's like, 2 things, keep an eye on the hostages and keep an eye on the ladder to your right, because the only way they could get to him was the ladder to the right of the map. I'm like, all right, I can do that. He's like, if they get over the hill and I don't kill them, you have to kill them, or they'll kill me. And I'm like, I got it. And we sat there for hours. It was already a terrorist-sided map. And this is before like sides flipped or anything, and there was scores. So we just sat and camped terrorist for hours. And literally between him really killing everybody and me killing all the sloppy seconds, we just weren't dying, right? And that led to him hitting me up for my ICQ number. And this kid Skits, his name was Skits, Wes, high school kid, Southern California. Him and his best friend had a clan called UGP, and they were playing Action Quake. And they were going to move the clan to this new game. And I was like, okay, first off, what's a clan? Because, I'm an older guy. I'm thinking clan, Ku Klux Klan. I don't know the word clan when it comes to video games, and he explains, oh, well, we're like a team, do you he's like, it's like, people that go bowling every Tuesday, or people play softball every Tuesday with their buddies. That's what we do. We'll be in an organized ladder, and we'll play these matches. And he kind of explained the whole thing to me, and the light bulb went off. I totally fucking got it. And I was like, yeah, sign me the fuck up. And I think I ended up being the 4th or 5th UGPer. And again, we were I say we were one of the teams to beat in North America before it fucking even mattered, right? There was no money, there was no prizes, there was no sponsorships. We were just the team to beat. These 2 guys, Diesel Boy and Skits, were phenomenal at this game, phenomenal. And again, they were high school buddies in real life. They gamed next to each other all the time, so they had all these advantages. And they were just Diesel Boy is legendary from back then. And I quickly realized that this team was really good, and as we recruited more and more people, I wasn't going to be a starter, So I was like, how can I help? I was quickly outclassed. I had a real job, I had all these things, so I wanted to help. And again, we were a clan. We weren't what you would think of as a pro gaming team at all. But we would save our money. Everyone would save their money and pitch in for the guys that couldn't, and we would go to CPLs. I think we went to 4 or 5 CPLs, got our ass kicked every single time. But that's why we went. We would hope that we would play the Euros, because we always played the North Americans. You want to go play the Euros because you never played them online, And we the first MLG we went, we played not MLG, Jesus, CPL. We played this team called MTWGOL, which is no longer around, but they pushed our shit in a map called Kabul that is no longer played on. And back then, 13-0 was a shutout. It was 12-0 aside, and they literally destroyed our team. It wasn't even funny. And we were like, oh fuck, well, I guess we know where we stand, right? And at that time, the best team in North America was a team called TSO, the Speakeasy Offensive, and they were actually one of the first teams to get sponsored. They were sponsored by ISP Speakeasy out of the Northwest. Super cool guys, had charisma. They were, again, think pre-3D a little bit, think pre-complexity a little bit. TSO was the shit. Oh, yeah. And we were good friends with them, nice guys and everything, but they were the team to beat. They then got their fucking shit pushed in exactly by the exact same team, 13-0, and we sat there and watched them all. And again, Kabul, terrible map. CT-sided map like nobody's business. Such a CT-sided map. Good operators, you're just not fucking getting in. And And we started on the terrorist side, so we were fucked. We were fucked anyway. But TSO's good. They had some good operators. They a different map, I think, but they got blanked 13-0. And so we were like, all right, we did just as good as the best team in North America did. Woohoo! Which was terrible. We got shut out. So did they. And so that's what UGP always was. It was a bunch of guys who wanted to play, wanted to have structure. But we were never putting together a sales deck, and we were still around towards the formations of some of these pro teams. Like if you ask, Moto used to quote like UGP as an inspiration for why he wanted to be good. Moto played for TSO, right? He came up through them. But we never went down that route. Like when they were starting to figure out sponsorship decks and knocking on doors, like our team would come to me and go, Scoots, can you get us some help to CPL? And I'd be like, shut up, you fuckers are Cal Maine. We're not going anywhere. No, we're not. That's not what we're doing here. We just never pursued it like that. But UGP led me to CPLs. CPL led me and online to this bigger, greater world of competitive Counter-Strike, which led me to a world of competitive video games in general, because it led me to see what everybody else was doing. And certainly going to CPLs and being very much entrenched in the GotFrag community as an outspoken member of it led me to the bosses of GotFrag, which very quickly led me to working for GotFrag, which literally all adds up to where I am today too. So sure. It's all been kind of a weird journey, but literally in this side of it, definitely started with Counter-Strike. If I would have been addicted to any other game, I don't know how it would have turned out. If I would have fallen down the EverQuest hole instead of the Counter-Strike hole, right? Oh, I don't know. So yeah, I'm definitely one. Like I know that you're gonna ask me questions about regrets and stuff, and like I'm one for no regrets in my life. Like everything I've done, like every decision leads to another in life, and those are good sometimes, and those are bad sometimes. But they are what they are. Right? And I look back at all this shit that somehow lined up to get me down this path. Like I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if we hadn't met at CPLs under the GotFrag D-pad banner, right? Like who knows where you would be if you didn't go down that road, right? So yeah, it's all really incestuously tied together. And that's why a lot of people like call this the old boys club. I hate that term because it sounds very shady, Illuminati, and evil. We are a bunch of old people, and we are a bunch of guys generally, and we have been around here for a long time. But we don't sit around and conspire against those that are new. We just happen to have seen all this shit. And I think it gives a lot of us a perspective on what new people are doing, and we call them on that. But it's just the old boys chiming. It's like, no, we've seen this mistake happen 5 other times. Trust us on this. We're not smarter than you. We've just seen it. Maybe we've even experienced it ourselves and fucked it up, right? Sure. So yeah, that's my Counter-Strike UGP thing, and now I've fired it back up. It's always been this kind of fun behind-the-scenes thing with several people, but now with PlanetSide, I literally have fired it back up. And I have no aspirations to build UGP into anything other than a PlanetSide outfit that plays NC Waterson stuff. Like I'm not going after sponsors. I'm not going to be a pro team. But so now, like I've gotten some of my old UGPers back together. I've gotten some of the friends of UGP back, and we're about 50 some odd strong right now as an outfit on Waterson. And it's fun. It's just fun, like rehashing with some of these people. Like really random thing that very few people will know, but there's a guy by the name of Poor Urich who made some of the coolest maps in Counter-Strike ever. And he's a UGPer. I just reconnected back with him because he posted on PlanetSide's Reddit. He posted a link to like a spree of kills he did behind a Sunder, and I'm like, wait a minute, Poor Urich, spelled the same way? No fucking way. And this guy is like a map maker from the old days, like old school UGP. Now obviously he's grown up and an adult in LA, but so like it's just funny. Like UGP is like this very interesting club. Anyway, you're welcome to join us. I know that you joined DVS on Waterson and quit playing.
I haven't played in a couple days or a couple weeks, really.
For those asking, we play NC, and for those asking, UGP stands for Unitary Guerrilla Platoon. Unitary Guerrilla Platoon.
There you go.
An organized platoon of individuals. Not my name, but it stuck. UGP.
All right, let's. You mentioned GotFrag in there, and I want to kind of go back to that. Counter-Strike was obviously in full swing, and you. I say that you can't see this, but I'm saying this with air quotes. You decided to work at GotFrag because no one actually got paid when he started out at GotFrag, or maybe even
true.
towards the very end of it. But how did you kind of get your foot in the door there? Was it just posting on the community, the forums, and that kind of leading to other people in the scene, or how did that all start?
I think both. And we talked about this pre-show. Like a lot of people that are watching this probably know me from my connections to EG and StarCraft 2, and like they know the recent Scoots, right? And I have always been, and maybe you see the difference now that I'm not with EG. I've always been a very serious, conscientious, loudmouth objector when I see things wrong, right? That is never. That I've just. And I did have to put a muzzle in it when I was at EG. I'm sure we'll talk about that some. But like I've always called people in life, period, not just internet life, but on their bullshit. If I think you're spinning me a yarn in real life about something in business, if you're a bus fucking company and you're lying to me about your number of buses, I'm gonna call you on it. And so before I worked at GotFrag, I was that guy on the forums calling everybody out and giving suggestions and saying, you're doing this wrong. And whether it was what GotFrag was doing or whether it was the leagues and the events they were covering, again, much like people are on shows now every day giving their critique of stuff, I was doing that on the forums of GotFrag. Positive and negative, no doubt negative, as well as positive. You know, I like calling people out. I like calling people out, right? It started as that, right? I was that guy. You know, I was in Midway's face. I was in those guys' face. You want to charge for what? You're going to do what? You're in CPL's pocket. What? Like I was that guy, right? Much like I am now. How many years later? I am what I am. So going to these events, you know, I slowly started to meet the guys that ran GotFrag. And it's like you said, like for years, nobody made any money at GotFrag. Not Trevor, not Lee, not Kuhn, none of the owners, and certainly none of the staff were getting paid. Like there was a turning point there. So the funny thing about it is I got truly into GotFrag's back rooms, if you will, and into their private chat rooms because of Alex Garfield, which is weird, but it's true. At the time, Alex was GotFrag was covering like people would do back then. Like frag movies were big, which is kind of a bummer that like. That's all a dying art, right? And maybe it's not as important, but you don't see cool frag movies anymore and frag clips, and like it's just not. Maybe it's not important. I don't know. Maybe the audience has moved on because they can watch so much more of it live and stream that the actual clips aren't as important. But anyway, and Alex was starting this little division within GotFrag that was gonna just kind of host movies and clips and stuff, and then he wanted a few guys to review them and say. Talk about the movie, the Pub Masters or whatever, and give a little critique. And he's like, hey, that's all I want you to do, dude, is watch some videos. And then tell me what you thought. You know, we'll have our little criteria with stars or whatever. I'm like, oh, fuck, I can do that, dude. Ended up never doing it. Never sent me one movie to watch, no nothing, right? But I end up in all these, like, IRC channels, and I think back then it was Roger Wilco or, fuck, I don't even remember the voice com, but it wasn't what we have now. And Midway and Lee, and we're like... And Jason Bass were like, "What are you, Scoots? What the fuck are you doing back? How'd you like?" First it was like, "How'd you get back here?" Right? Because I was the guy in the forums, right? Like, hey, you know, and I explained to them what I was doing, and they instantly were like, "Well, that's just a waste. Do you really want to help us? Are you interested in like doing something?" I'm like, "Yeah. Here's my real job. This is what I do. So I can't, you know, here's my limited space of opportunity for you. But I'd love to somehow help." And I ended up being like. A managing director type with Jason Bass, and basically a lot of the day-to-day operations moved to Bass and kind of moved to me. I was editor-in-chief, so Midway could move more to content creation and coverage, and Lee and those guys could move more to a technical sales aspect. So, you know, kind of keeping staff rolling. You know, we were launching shit like D-Pad and all this other stuff. But again, for a very, very long time, unpaid position. And then finally, you know, those of us that were and I made it very clear to them from the get-go. I go, look, I will come dedicate time to you and effort to you, and wear the GotFrag name strongly, But if you can't pay me, I want a piece of this, no matter how small. I want to work for something, right? If you're going to have me come into a startup mentality, then cool. You know, I don't want you to treat me like the 14-year-old kid who wants to write Counter-Strike coverage for you, because I'm going to do more for your business, but I want more in return. And of course, much like any other startup, it's much easier to offer shares in something than it is to like pay someone a salary when there's no salary to be paid. So I worked a deal out with them where I, for lack of a better word, got a piece of the company, right? Doesn't mean anything if you don't sell it, but it makes those do it, and it happens every day in startups, right? That's what you do. You work towards a share if you can. So that's what got me in that door. They couldn't pay me, but they could do that for me. So they sliced me off a piece of the company. Again, not Trevor Slice, I wish, but again, I didn't deserve Trevor Slice. Wasn't my idea. Wasn't all my hard work to get to that point. So I started working with them, and then that leads to much bigger things with GotFrag. You know, the idea of media really got me excited. You know, and we had started. I want to say, I think I joined them officially in like 2004, maybe volunteer online in 2003 doing stuff. But there was a company called MFA VP, right? Alchemist and the two Hubie twins. There again, we're also making content.
I haven't heard that name in forever.
And here's another fucked up thing. They were making content in 2004 and in 2005 and in 2006 from these tournaments, CPL mainly because they didn't travel so much, that people aren't doing, right? Like now you see stand-up interviews and everyone does a stand-up before and after, and you know, you've been victim of that. You've been guilty of that. Hey, what do you think of the groups, right? Yeah. And you don't, and what you also don't see is a whole lot of wrap-up. You see maybe a little hype sizzle, and you see maybe months later a hype wrap-up sizzle, but it's actually generally made by somebody else, right? Yep. And what these guys were doing is they would show up and they would film SK playing 3D live, multiple camera angles, 2 cameras on each team, different players, and they would then grab the replay of that. They would run up to their suite and they would edit that into a little footage. So they would show Heaton out of game with his mouse yelling at his teammate, boom, right into Heaton in-game view, killing guys, right? And they did that shit on the fucking fly. And you just didn't see that kind of shit, right? So, and unfortunately, you don't see much of it nowadays either. But anyway, long story short, but again, labor of love for those guys. Like, they were buying their own TriCasters, buying all their own gear. GotFrag works out a deal with those guys to come one particular CPL and do the same kind of thing, but do it under this thing called GotFrag TV. And we'll help you produce it. We'll help you with assets. We'll bring the sponsors. We'll put pre-roll on it. We'll do all this stuff. You'll get paid for it finally. That led to, I actually did some interviews. My first ever interviews that I did on camera were as a host for MFAVP. I interviewed Moto, I interviewed BDS from SK, but that led me and Alchemist to having drinks, to them becoming fast friends and going, okay, how do we do this and take what TSN, Team Sportscast Network, used to be Tri-Sportcast ever before that, and GGL and ITG, what DJ Weed, those two companies were doing this. They were doing audio streaming, shoutcasting, and they were now merging into the world of showing video, using TriCasters, and doing this shit live. And we looked at what they did and were doing, and we looked at what the Hubies were doing with their content and went, how do we make GotFrag better than all of them? And let's call it GotFrag TV. And that's what we did. And we went down the road on the cheap for a while, and we convinced the bosses of GotFrag to let us buy a TriCaster, to let us open a little studio and kind of get things rolling and do some remote shit. And then as we were doing all that, and again, we were doing lots of remotes, a lot of different Counter-Strike, we did tons of different shit. We did a CPL tournament. Around about 2007 or so, MLG comes knocking, right? And by this time, GotFrag TV is actually probably one of the coolest things that GotFrag is doing. Because, again, I think that at the end of our time broadcasting Counter-Strike, we were showing Counter-Strike better than anybody else, to maybe this day still is, with how many different camera angles we had to our availability. I mean, I think we did it right. It's a really hard, any FPS with multiple POVs is incredibly hard to try to stream anyway. But I think we were doing a really good job with it. MLG comes in, buys us. So that does two things. For one, that gives Scott now a real job. Because this is a different MLG than you and I kind of know now. It's a different CEO. He's spending money differently. He's buying everything he can get his hands on, right? In a bidding war with CGS to make the portfolio of MLG the biggest thing it can be, right? Because, again, the old CEO, not Sundance, but Bromberg, wants to sell this big monster to ESPN. And he wants to sell it for millions and millions of dollars. So he grabs us. He grabs MMO Champions, right? He grabs all these different entities to add, and all it really did was like dilute their brand and ended up hurting every brand they bought, right? It's unfortunate because it literally killed it. At the end of the day, they killed GotFrag. What people seem to forget is there was a brief window there when we were all on MLG's salary that they infused us, and we opened the GotFrag TV studio in Phoenix, and we were cranking out GotFrag Revival Cups, and we were doing all this really, really cool shit. And Jesuit was traveling to Russia for Code 5, and it didn't last very long, but like before it was the worst thing that ever happened to GotFrag, it was the best that ever happened to GotFrag, right? Unfortunately, they didn't buy us because they loved Counter-Strike and they were going to put it on the circuit. They bought us because they didn't want CGS to buy us, which is unfortunate. So that's how I got to GotFrag TV and Alchemist, because Alchemist moved here, Jesuit moved out here, Shrew moved out here. I had a team of 4 different people that all lived here. And again, we had GotFrag TV rocking and rolling, and that ended in 2008. I think I worked for MLG GotFrag for about a year and a half. And then they basically said, hey, we kind of really like what you do. But we're consolidating. They did one of these. Spend. Time to trim. And one of the trims was, we like what some of you guys do, but we want you to come do it in New York City. We want to close the Phoenix operation. We want those of you that we like, which was me, Alchemist, etc., to move and help us do kind of the same thing you're doing, but kind of not, because we're not going to do a whole lot of Counter-Strike probably, but we want to do it in New York City. And it was my good buddy Lee giving me that opportunity, because it was an opportunity, but I said no. My home's Phoenix. You can't pay me physically enough money to move to New York City for me to move. You can't duplicate my house, all these things I have. I wouldn't expect you to. And New York City is a fantastic place to visit. I am not the kind of guy that would probably dig living in New York. So I passed on the opportunity. I did, and so that ended my life at GotFrag / MLG.
Now, you said pretty much your entire GotFrag story there. I want to go back and pick on a couple of different parts. Doing the CPL winner, whatever year that was, 2006 maybe, was that the first GotFrag TV production? Full-fledged GotFrag TV production? Yeah.
It might have been winter 2005. I can't remember which one it was.
Was it that long ago? Have I known you since then?
Yeah, the picture you linked. Dude, actually, the question for you is, no, because I think we met before that. Did we not meet at the MLG Grand Finals?
Oh my God, that's right. Jesuit in Vegas.
Jesuit and I drove there, and we met you there because you were covering it for D-Pad.
That's right.
I think that was before we streamed at CPL.
Yeah, us three. We were the first 3 to meet MLG.
Yeah,
I totally remember that.
I remember calling Lee and Midway, going, "Wow, these guys! This is the coolest looking event I've ever seen." Remember, it was at the Red Rock, and it was all decked out, and like in our world, like CPLs looked like the basement compared to this.
Well, we actually were in the basement at CPL too.
Yeah, but I think that's where you and I met at the event. But yeah, I want to say 2005 or 2006 was the CPL was definitely our first full-fledged like flip the switch.
Yeah.
Broadcast, and we did Quake. We were the official, and and we also pissed a lot of people off because we did it like real sports. We bought the rights, so we literally approached CPL and said we want to own the rights. We don't want GGL to come in unless we approve it. We don't want TSN to come in unless we approve it. And we did like real sports. That's what happens. Media buys the rights to the league, and we did that. And again, We bought them for the whole season for Cal and everything, and we still let TSN broadcast matches of the week and all that. All we asked them to do was give GotFrag a shout out. But that's the monetization of this shit started long before people were bitching about Twitch CPM, right? So that was our first big event. I had the Hubies. That's where I met fucking Rod. And I've told the story on Live on 3. Like, the first time I met Rod was the first time I yelled at Rod, which so some shit never changes.
I remember that. That was a weird moment, man, because here I was like a complete nobody basically working. I forgot what I actually did that event, to be honest. I think I was like maybe PA. We didn't really have titles back then. I kind of just did whatever you guys needed. And I do remember you guys yelling at Rod and just thinking like, God, that Slasher guy's such a fuck up, man. What is he doing right now? Oh, God.
Some things never change.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. It was cool, and it kind of set the tone for everything we did. You know, we were the first one to ever do an instant replay. You know, with the TriCasters, we had the ability to record our stream and then instantly flip back and go, let's look at that kill again. Like shit like that. Scoreboards. You know, and again, we just took it one step further, like the guy, like the pioneers of the TSNs and the DJ Wheats and those guys, right? But we just looked at it, and you know, we had a little bit more money at that time, and we just went the next step. You know, and again, yeah, and I fell in love with that, and that was my, like, if you go back to my old story of like being in drama and doing those kind of things, like I directed our senior play, right? I was kind of into drama, right? I was in all our plays, but I found it more enjoyable to do behind the scenes shit for the plays, like when I would stage manage for a production or do lights or audio or direct, than like being the guy in makeup on stage, right? I never thought that was what I was the best at or you know, really suited to be. So doing like being in show business, for lack of a word, because it's live TV, right? We do live TV. We're doing it right now.
Oh yeah.
But we're doing it on the internet. I just that Jones of that excitement, like I am so giddy to sit back down behind MLG's curtain, and I don't care whose curtain, like because that like you get excited when you do that shit, you know. And it is different than if you're in front of the camera, mind you. It's a different kind of nervousness, but like I get just as nervous when we do productions, and you're the tech guy. And maybe more so because more is kind of on your shoulders. You know, DJ Wheat has to worry about a lot, but his window of worry is like right here in front of him, right? If you're the guy in charge of the entire stream, you not only have to worry about what DJ Wheat's doing right, but everybody else around him, right? So it's a different kind of pressure. But I dig it. You know, it's adrenaline rush for me.
I'm trying to think of where I want to go from here, but right now it's just a huge nostalgia trip, kind of thinking back. Did the public ever know what the private GotFrag channel was? Did that ever get leaked? Because I remember that channel, and I remember some good conversations, man.
You're talking about Sofa Kings, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't think so. God, IRC. Oh my fucking
dude,
God.
Sofa Kings had some of the most real talk I've seen in esports in a long time.
Jesus, you know, people like. And I get a lot of heat lately for like when I call people out, like if I call people an asshole, or if I rip on another big figure in the scene, and I'm like, man, if you knew some of the assholes that we had to deal with back then, you would be happy that I'm calling shit on some of this bullshit. Like we had real life fucking thieves back then. And while I think some people don't have good business models, I don't necessarily think they're thieves these days. But like fucking guys like Gary Sanchez and shit, fuck, man, like it's crazy. Sock from Green Berets, and so yeah, talk about nostalgia trip. Holy fuck.
Yeah, I'm still stuck in it, man.
Yeah, speaking of nostalgia, like people, like again, like you used to be called Moogle.
Yeah,
you used to be huge into console games, D-pad type games where you wrote about those and reviewed them. You used to be huge into WoW. You actually used to be a sideline reporter for Evil Geniuses at MLG WoW tournaments. And I was streaming for that GotFrag.
By the way, that video, the video that you kind of hold me at ransom, I showed it to Nick and Dan. When we were in Vegas, and maybe we'll release this video because it is pretty hilarious.
Oh, dude.
But Nick and Dan watched it, and all three of us were just in tears because of how bad I did the wobbles, man.
You were
I was doing this, man. It was so funny.
Oh, here we are.
Talk about like
You
Talk
were doing
about
the
some
shift for sure.
talk about some bad interview there, man. That was, and I had a shaved head, which is just
Yeah.
crazy.
You know, and the funny thing, and a totally separate topic, but like the same conversations that people had about World of Warcraft being a professional
Oh, yeah.
esport, and is it worthy? Is it good? Is it a random generator? You got to know the game to play the game. Are the exact same conversations that happen now when you're talking about Dota and League of Legends, and they're insane numbers.
Yep.
Because when we streamed WoW for MLG, again, first PC circuit game, we destroyed every other stream number.
Yeah.
Right? It's the exact same thing that League's doing to everybody, right? And it was the exact same debate. And I was always like, fuck, I might not like the game, but obviously millions of people play it. That's who's tuning in. Why is it a problem? You know? And it's just funny. It's full circle. It happens to be a different game.
Yep.
But, you know, when 30,000 people tuned in and we were used to like 8 to 10 watching Counter-Strike and Halo, maybe those numbers, MLG lost their shit. Like, whoa, world of what? Holy fuck. So, yeah, talk about full circle. Holy shit.
Absolutely. How much is a GotFrag needed these days?
Well, I don't know. I think GotFrag's been replaced by scene sites, right? I mean, I think actually if GotFrag, I think the first thing everyone needs to understand is as cool as GotFrag was, and no matter how many millions of dollars you think we did or didn't get bought for, it wasn't necessarily the most profitable business on the planet to be involved in. It's not. It's just print journalism, which obviously is then video and all that, is, you know, it's a loss leader in a lot of ways. You know, the page views to send a crew to CPL, to put them up, to crank all that content out, did not equate to the same amount of eyeballs watching it to pay the bills, right? It just didn't. So I think if GotFrag came back and tried to be what it was, two things. A, it would already be in trouble as a super successful business, and two, oh, my camera's off a little bit, and two, there's way more competition. Like GotFrag can't come back and compete with Counter-Strike because the days are over. Half-Life TV, ESEA, and Godred have that audience, and they're already sliced up, so to speak. And if it comes back to be any other sort of coverage site that's really not Counter-Strike centric, then it's really not even GotFrag, right? We had that trouble when we were still GotFrag and we started to delve down, covering. Remember when we were all, you know, we covered WoW towards the end more than we covered the core games, and
Yeah.
you turn your restaurant regulars against you to open a new kind of restaurant.
And to be fair, we should state that Reddit doesn't have shit on the GotFrag community when it comes to being assholes and trolling, like we experienced when we saw GotFrag switch to this MLG, this WoW coverage. Those guys were relentless, man. Those comments were some of the most brutal I've ever seen. Reddit doesn't have shit on them, man.
Yeah, Reddit's got some decorum and an upvote, downvote system so that shit can disappear.
Yeah.
Eventually, GotFrag put in a little thumb up, thumb down thing. Was it thumbs? I think it was thumbs. But
I think it was thumbs. Yeah.
But yeah, again, like I don't know where it fits anymore. Now, could you open a general cover it all kind of thing? Yeah, but are you going to get ahead of the brand has lost its name, right? And I'll have the same debate about Quantic coming back. Why? Why bring GotFrag back? It's dead. It's over. As much as I helped build it and love it and have so many memories of it, call it something different and be a coverage site, right? Because you can't be what it was. It's too late. The window, it's gone. You know. So I don't know. And I've heard, you know, you hear these rumblings about MLG bringing it back as some sort of community site.
Yeah.
But you've got ESCFI, you've got all these other ones going. You're certainly not going to do better StarCraft 2 coverage than the ones that are already doing it. And every game has their Team Liquids, for lack of a better word, right? So, like, where does it fit? I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't want it not to come back, but I just think it's going to be okay, what is this? You know, it's like you said, the forums were some of the coolest ones, but what, you're going to get fucking Vutran back to be your forum troll? Like, yes, Daniel Vutran, I remember you. I think, again, like, you asked me about CS Pro Mod. Like, there's two ships that have sailed, GotFrag and CS Pro Mod. I think.
That's true. It's true. Well, why don't we take another little break here? When we come back, we'll talk about your journey into the world of managing a team with evil geniuses and kind of that whole process. So don't go anywhere, guys. We got more real talk with SirScoots coming up in just a little bit.